She looks just like any other American tourist, enjoying the fading sun as it slips behind the majestic pyramids of Egypt. And as this frail pensioner gingerly makes her way through the historic ruins, her presence among the crowds goes barely noticed. But the reality is, her smiles mask her own personal disappointment and frustration, for she'd rather be somewhere else. Her mind is on Gaza, not Giza. Yes, she is very different to the tourists who head to Egypt to marvel at its ancient heritage. But being different is not something new to this 85-year-old grandmother, who has experienced what it's like to be different. It once nearly cost her her life, and it is that very life she now puts on the line for the sake of others. As a child, she stared down the barrel of a Nazi gun, and 8 decades on, she still finds herself in the crosshairs. But this time, they are the crosshairs of Israeli guns. Meet Hedy Epstein. This is her story, and she shares it with you today, in the hope you will also be inspired to go that one extra step for the children of Palestine. Hedy Epstein, you're 85 years young, as you say, and you were born in Freiburg, Germany. I want to take you right back to your childhood, and if you can tell me a little bit about it. You know, was it a normal sort of childhood?
Yes, I think it was a normal childhood to start out with, but after Hitler came to power in January of 1933, things did begin to change. I remember my parents and other adults talking about Hitler just before he came to power, and saying that they hoped he wouldn't come to power. And then after he did come to power, saying they hoped he wouldn't remain in power very long. And I just thought it was a lot of nonsense that adults talk about. Just 2 months after Hitler came to power, I realized that indeed it does have something to do with me. Saturday, April 1st, 1933, there was a boycott of Jewish businesses all over Germany. My father and his younger brother had a business that my great-grandfather started in 1858. And there was a Nazi standing in front of our business, in front of the Jewish bakery, the Jewish butcher, and so on. I asked my parents, what is this? Why is this man standing there? And they said, you know, don't worry about it, it's just today. And it was true, it was only that day. And the purpose of the boycott was to prevent Christians from shopping in Jewish stores. And it certainly had that effect that day, but it also had long-range effects. My parents decided that I should go to school in a neighboring community because the educational level was somewhat higher there. The first year that I was in that school, everything seemed to be fairly normal. But after that, the children no longer talked to me. During recess, nobody played with me. And I had the great misfortune, the last 2.5 years that I was in that school, I had a math teacher who was an SS man. The SS were the Nazi stormtroopers, the Nazi elite. And he came to class almost every day wearing his black SS uniform, knee-high black boots, and in his right boot he frequently carried a revolver. And when he asked me questions, he would sometimes have his hand on the revolver, at other times he actually pointed it at me.
And did he do that with other children in the class?
No, I was the only Jewish child in the class, and he didn't do that to any of the other children.
When did you become aware you were Jewish?
Well, my parents were religiously not Jewish, and we didn't adhere to all the practices, etc., of the Jewish religion. But Hitler made it rather clear what it means to be Jewish.
So you've been to the West Bank many times. When you've seen the Palestinian children, do you ever look and see any little Hedy Epsteins?
My persecution is minimal in comparison to what the Palestinian children, especially the Gazan children after this massacre last year and early this year. I mean, they have to be traumatized for the rest of their lives.
These children are orphans, and they are the very children who melt the heart of Hedy. She might be 85 years old now, but she knows the pain of being an orphan. While she survived the Holocaust, her parents didn't.
Soon after Hitler came to power, my parents realized that Germany is not a place to raise a family, and so they attempted to leave Germany, and increasingly they were more desperate in getting out of Germany. Initially, the attempt was to get us out as a family unit, but after my father came back from Dachau, the decision was made that if one of us has the opportunity to leave, then that person will leave, and hopefully the others can follow soon thereafter. And the opportunity to leave Germany came for me in May 1939. I left on a children's transport, or a Kindertransport, for England. England took in almost 10,000, mostly Jewish children, in the 9 months preceding World War II, and would have taken more except the war broke out. I remember my parents, before I left, gave me all kinds of admonitions, as parents normally do. Be good, be honest, and so on. And the last sentence always was, and we will see each other again soon. And I believed that. In 1956, I received 2 letters from a French organization, one pertaining to my father, one to my mother, telling me that they were sent to the concentration camp Auschwitz. My father was sent there in August of 1942, my mother on September 11th, 1942. And they've never been, that was the, you know, that was it. It was not until September 1980 when I went back to Germany, or to Europe, to visit the various camps where my parents had been. And the last camp was Auschwitz. And when I stood on the place, which was called the ramp during the Nazi period, where the cattle cars arrived and the people had to get off, and the infamous Dr. Mengele made a selection as to who will live and who will die. When I stood on that spot in September 1980, I finally was able to say to myself, your parents did not survive. These were the table decorations on each table at my 85th birthday party. And the background, which is a faint background, is taken in the camp where my parents were, and on the occasion when men and women were allowed to spend 1 hour together. It is sort of faded in the background.
After the war, Hedy married and launched into her new life in America and tried to leave behind her tragic past. until news of a new human tragedy began to unfold, thousands of miles away.
In 1982, I got what you might call a wake-up call. I had heard about the massacres in the 2 refugee camps of Sabra and Shatila, located in Lebanon. And I needed to find out, what was that all about? Who was responsible for this?
What was driving you to find out more about Sabra and Shatila? Were you politically active?
I just heard, and I don't remember how I heard, probably read something, or I don't remember how I heard about it. It was just something that, a horrible incident that happened. And so I wondered, what is this all about? You know, and also what happened between 1948 and 1982, when I paid little or no attention to this part of the world. And as I learned more and understood more, I became increasingly more horrified by the policies and practices of the Israeli government and the Israeli military. And as I learned more and understood more, I began to speak out publicly against those policies and practices.
To everyone's amazement, the Holocaust survivor embraced the Palestinian struggle with a passion, and even went to witness for herself their suffering and resistance.
By 2003, I was in the West Bank for the first time. I've been in the West Bank 5 times all told since then.
Hedy Epstein is well known and much loved in the West Bank, but her recent focus has been on Gaza. And since it fell under the Israeli and Egyptian siege, she has been determined to smash the blockade by land or sea. I remember when the boat set sail from Larnaca, you were left standing, waving us off. How difficult was that?
It was just awful. I mean, I just wanted to jump in the water and swim to the boat and get on that boat.
And you could have swum as well, because you'd taken swimming lessons, hadn't you, before you joined the group? Since then, Hedy has been more determined than ever to get to the isolated Gaza Strip, which has been cut off from the rest of the world. More so since the brutal war, when around 1,400 innocent women, children and men were killed. But not everyone wants to see such an iconic person reach Gaza. But you were going to try again.
Right.
What happened?
In June of 2009, one day before I was leaving to join the rest of the group and go to Gaza on the Dignity, I was assaulted on my street, where I live in the United States, at about 1:45 in the afternoon, broad daylight, sun shining brightly. I didn't hear anyone approach me, but someone pushed me with both hands really hard on my back. I lost my balance and fell to the ground, injured both my knees, had a gash in my chin, and nicked an artery, and there was a tremendous amount of blood loss. So was I targeted, or was it a random act of violence? Who knows?
Undaunted by the brutal attack, Hedy once again packed her bags and headed for Egypt. She wasn't alone. While her plan was to join 1,400 members of the Gaza Freedom Marches in December 2009, hundreds more were travelling by road on the Viva Palestina convoy led by George Galloway MP.
Hedy, come and give me a hug!
As she arrived in Cairo airport, I was convinced that this time she would get to Gaza.